Hello and welcome to the Minority Arts Appreciation Society podcast, where we're ticking all the boxes and bringing a minority perspective to popular internet discourse. Today we are continuing with 2021 boxes
Whoa,
because
whoa.
time is convoluted, and we are now in June, I believe. And what was released in June that I wanted to listen to but didn't get around to, and therefore put it on the schedule, was Mike's disco exclamation point.
hmm
Um,
Yeah, we live by the rule of the podcast.
yeah,
It tells
and
us what to do.
we've got some nice 2021 stuff going up, and I'm kind of happy that we're doing the second half of 2021 post kind of the end of year show, because it means we can cover
Yeah.
like the stuff that we didn't get to or was like less super popular. Like we don't have like we're probably not going to have like the token time of the creator episode because we already had that discussion, if that makes sense. So it's kind of I kind of like that
Yeah.
it's shaken out this way.
Yeah, I get it. We've done a bit of
Yeah.
like a sieve, you know? We've kind of filtered a bunch of stuff out. And we're just kind of getting the remnants now.
Exactly. But before we jump into
That was beautiful. That was like when Pierce teaches Troy how to sneeze. He goes, that was great.
Damn, I don't even remember that. I need to rewatch Community.
Season 1, baby.
And I'm still getting through Office. I'm on season 7. Because
you rewatching The
once.
Office?
Yeah, you mentioned it that one time. You're like, oh, me and my partner are rewatching The Office. And I'm like, I gotta rewatch that whole show now. Because it's in my brain. You did this to me.
I made you. What was it I referenced? I like referenced a particular thing, and you felt like you had to rewatch the whole show to get to that reference. I think it was maybe me saying that Scarlett thought of Gabe's character as like an egg.
That was recent. That was post me watching it. It was specifically your partner saying that they really liked the Michael Scott farewell episode.
Oh yeah,
and now that
it's
I'm
a
like
great episode.
deep in every episode, I'm like, can I stop watching now? Like, is it okay to leave now? But I'm like, oh, I gotta get to Robert California. I just gotta get to Robert
really
California.
I'm the fucking Lizard King.
Very excited. But before we get to Mike, we got a preamble. It's always fun to have a little preamble.
Oh yeah.
Recording this, it is nearing the end of February 2022, and we are all in my purview. We are all waiting for Elden Ring. Every single one of us is waiting for that game, and everything we do between now and Elden Ring is just burning time until Elden Ring drops. So one thing I've been doing to burn time is the memes got to me, Tilly. The memes got to me, and I have begun watching Euphoria High. have you watched Euphoria High? I don't want to typecast you. I just assume that you have some experience of Euphoria High.
But two things. I'm like deeply, as a trans lesbian, as a T for T trans woman, deeply in love with Hunter Schafer, very deeply, and I'm not afraid of, or ashamed even, of putting that onto the internet. And the other factor is that I haven't seen it, like I said, I think, but it is my partner's favorite show so far.
Oh, that's cool.
Scarlett loves Euphoria, like adores that shit.
So have you seen? Has it been on around you?
No, it actually it has been. No. I have like heard it. Scarlett was watching it on their laptop next to me. I have experienced Euphoria.
You heard Euphoria High sounds.
Yeah, I have heard Euphoria High sounds.
Yeah, trendy pop music and sardonic voiceover by Zendaya, while characters are audibly snorting cocaine.
Oh, that was horrible.
All you hear. Okay. Euphoria High. it's
Why have you brought up Euphoria? Talk to
I
me.
think it's a doozy. I think it's a real doozy.
What
Because
does that mean?
on one hand, the one thing I've noticed recently is how, the Zeitgeist TV show is on rotation, right?
Okay.
Just now, before Euphoria High season 2 came out, the Zeitgeist TV show was Succession, right? Everyone was watching
Yeah.
Succession. Everyone was like, hell yeah, Succession's pretty good. And then we've done a hard pivot. We've done a hard pivot. Now Stan Twitter is watching Euphoria High, which is like the opposite of Succession. Like,
Yeah.
Succession's one of
I
the
would.
whitest shows I've ever watched. And Euphoria High is, very, very queer, very got
Yeah.
non-white people in it. Stan Twitter, LGBT Twitter,
They
really
love it. They eat
got the
that shit.
Euphoria High memes, the Arkham memes. Um,
Also, the Malcolm and Marie haters as well. Don't forget that audience, like the people
that okay.
who
This
went
is the
from
part. This is the
go
part
go
that's
go.
messing me up about Euphoria High. Sam Levinson, man. Okay, I defended Malcolm Marie, and I still think Malcolm Marie is better than people make it out to be. I think that there is enough. It's a very dense film. There's enough there. It's crunchy enough. Like we can
hmm
have a conversation about it. And
What's
and
going on with
I
Euphoria?
feel like on this podcast we talk a lot about like how much a creator kind of weighs over their work.
Mm,
I think
a
this came
lot.
up a lot with Paul Thomas Anderson, and I don't know if we'll get to it on the podcast, but with Licorice Pizza, we're kind of seeing that again with just how much knowing who made the thing affects how you view the thing, right?
Yeah.
And like I'm gonna be real with you, Tilly. I think Euphoria High is a very entertaining show. I think it's funny. I think it's like exciting. It's sort of like artsy. It's literally if A24 produced Riverdale.
Yeah, I was
Uh,
gonna
and
say,
like,
yeah. Yeah.
it is exciting and fun when things are happening because it
Uh-huh.
explains like teenage drama.
I feel like you're building to
But bro, someone made the point, right? That look, this is a white dude directing a show about like high school teenagers fucking, and it shows it on like Game of Thrones level. Like every episode, at least 20 minutes of the runtime is going to be titties dancing.
Oh,
And at a certain level,
really?
I have to be like, because I don't consider myself like queer, so I'd be really interested to talk to like a queer person about how they think about Sam Levinson handling the show. But it
That's
did
really
make me reflect
interesting.
like, how am I supposed to be taking this? Like, there were, am I like, should I?
Your
Feel,
audible confusion is very funny. Your audible confusion is really making me
yeah,
giggle.
like
Keep
it is a
going.
titillating show. There's no other way to put it. They're playing fun music. These are very beautiful, attractive performers. Doing very sensual stuff, and it's like there's interesting stuff in there about addiction and depression, and I think there's interesting stuff in there. But yeah, Sam Levinson. I'm not sure. Like I had this thing where I do think it's interesting watching, kind of similar to what's the director of the guy who did Nocturnal Animals? Let me look it up real quick. Um, Tom Ford.
Mm-hmm.
And these directors who kind of come from a very like wealthy kind of fashion background, modeling background,
Yeah.
directing these very like raw and like emotional kind of youthful stories. I think it's an interesting kind of prism that we get to see this kind of NZ kind of emotion through, right?
Mm.
Like the fact that Euphoria looks like a Frank Ocean music video. Uh,
Yeah.
and there are some really great moments like Zendaya like really looking like shit high as hell, and then it zooms in and she's like, I'm so happy. Like that's a really good
Oh,
stuff like that.
yeah.
Like it's a really gorgeous show. uh but I just have to question whether or not, someone made a joke that I guarantee in 4 years time a bunch of people are going to come out and be like, yes, Sam Levinson's really weird. He did really weird stuff with
Yeah.
the with the woman on set, in like a
Yeah.
Joss Whedon move, and
Yeah.
everyone's like,
Yeah.
"Wow,
Yeah.
how did we not see this coming?" And it's like, I don't know, maybe,
Maybe we should have.
yeah. But anyway, I was hoping you'd see it because I would be very curious I'm still gonna watch more because I really like it. Like episodes end, and I'm like, damn, I got to see what happens next. This is
Yeah.
crazy. I really like being at
Well, it.
Euphoria High. The surreal kind of it's very skins. It's got like the heightened realism.
Oh, but the thing is, okay. I think I would like Euphoria, but I fucking hate Skins, man. I don't. I think
Yeah.
Skins is like bad.
I
I don't know
I
about you.
I I think Skins is kind of it's bad, but it's also kind of epic. If does that make sense? Like the audacity of Skins'
I was
existence
about
is
to
kind of like I
say
respect the hustle of this
it is
show.
so unabashedly itself. But it's like a dickhead who's like really comfortable in their own skin. It's like, why are
Yeah,
you? How did you get so comfortable in your own skin? You're
yeah.
so horrible. Um,
And in
but
watching Euphoria, there's one aspect of Skins I really miss, is weird to say. But in Skins, I'm forgetting lots of names, but in the first couple
the
seasons of
names,
Skins, you've got character Tony, played by Nicholas Hoult.
yeah,
He's generally just one of the weirdest characters in TV shows ever.
really
Like
genuinely
a
strange.
truly sociopathic monster for the first kind of season. And then in the second season, there comes this like disability narrative. And he grows and everyone likes him and like you miss him when he kind of gets ushered out of the show. And that is
Yeah,
quite weird and subversive, I think, as an arc. Like
yeah, I
doing
get
that with
that.
Tony was cool. And in Euphoria, one thing I don't like about it is there is like an objective villain. Like there is a guy
I
who is
get,
like,
yeah,
the closeted gay jock who like does horrible things to people because he can't handle his gay feelings. Uh
yeah,
and it's very cliche and I don't know. It's also like uninteresting. He's so evil. Like it's
yeah.
really hard to
It's hard to ask questions
so much of the
about
drama
people
in
like
the
that.
show is because there's literally an evil man in the school. And it's like it would be nicer if the drama came from like, just kind of frictional human relationships.
Yeah, no, I,
Yeah.
I, I can really see that. Like, oh, but it's weird because Scarlett. It's interesting you brought up like I'd be interested to know what a queer person thinks because Scarlett. I mean, the main like praise they give it around queer stuff is around how incredibly well Jules is handled.
Mm.
Like, they think that's some of the best storytelling about trans people like
Yeah.
that they've ever seen. Um, but then there's a lot of stuff obviously going on in the periphery of that, and like as well as like what's the word, canonically queer characters, like how does it handle queerness in like on like all levels.
Yeah.
That's an entirely different question. But
Yeah.
it's a show that like I feel really weird about like all of the stuff that you just talked about because um you're kind of talking about like how we like let the creators of art affect our the way we look at it, and like dude, all the stuff I don't know what to think of Sam Levinson, like, because he's working with all these people who are like really outspoken about this kind of
Mm.
thing, but then like and like you said, like you would expect there to have been some shit about him, like he just kind of seems so like weird,
Mm.
that there must be something on him, but there just isn't. And I just find it
Yeah.
incredibly confusing. And
Well,
look, but although there's that stuff, there is one
mm.
thing where one of the characters this season, in the season that's airing
Yeah.
now,
Barbie
like
Ferreira, right?
yeah, like well, she
Mm.
got fucked over.
Mm.
And I do worry about
Yeah.
stuff like that, and I worry about
Yeah.
getting invested in a show, and like a show that's achievements are so linked to like its writer, because so much rides on the fact that whether or not like a white straight guy could write a show like Euphoria well, like,
Yeah.
you know what I mean. So like there's a lot of attention on him.
I really and I don't I regardless of what happens with Sam Levinson down the line,
Mm,
I don't think that takes away from like your partner said how great of a character Jules is, Hunter Schafer, and I also love Zendaya. She's like genuinely amazing in the show.
yeah,
And And
I've heard really good things about that. Like really
Haruto
good.
is a revelation in it. Like she is so good. I love her
Dude,
character so
oh
much, and that's part of like me watching it, being like, "This is good. Like this is legit. Like I really
yeah.
do like this." In the same way that, in my opinion, Willow from Buffy is like amazing, kind of an amazing kind of gay character, historically, and like
Yeah.
and no matter what Josh Whedon does, I don't think that takes away from how good that writing team did with the Willow Tara relationship.
No. No.
So,
Definitely
who
not.
knows? But hey, I'm happy to be at Euphoria High. It's been a ride.
Yeah.
If anyone at
You're a
home is
good student.
enjoying Euphoria, let me know if you, I don't
Shout
know,
out
what do
to
you
you
think about it?
Euphoria lovers.
Yeah, 100%. Anyway, yeah.
Average
All it
Euphoria
needs
enjoyer.
it doesn't have a Cassie level character yet. Cassie and Skins, it truly fucked Vibe's character. We haven't hit
Oh, but
that
like
level yet.
just everything about like every writing decision with a character is wrong. Just like every single decision. Like, oh my god. Okay, good. I'm glad because I rewatched Cassie's dance thing
Mm,
recently, and I was like, wow, this is the worst show I've ever seen. Because I watched a couple of episodes of Skins, like the first two ever, a
mm.
few months back to be like, I think this might be garbage. Let me go and see. And then it was. And then I watched that and I was like, wow. But yeah, that's it for Euphoria High, I guess.
That's it for Euphoria High. Now we
Cool.
go to
To
we leave the world of
sadness.
television to go back to music. Mike. Yeah, Mike. I don't know much about this rapper. He's from the Bronx. He's from NY, New York, New
Yeah.
York. I don't know if the Bronx is in New York, New York. I don't know much about New York, to be
The
honest with you.
Bronx, I think, refers to Brooklyn.
Yeah, is
Um,
Brooklyn in New York, New York?
Brooklyn is in fact in New York. We are
In...
ignorant Brits.
No, but there's New York, and then there's New York, New York.
No, there's like it's like New York, New York, New York. Yeah.
Okay. Okay, cool. So, do you have any
But
history,
wait,
Mike?
well, one other really cool thing about Mike is that he spent a few years in London. Like I think he
Okay.
grew up in London.
Oh, cool. Like
So
MF
like,
Doom
and
kind
he,
of.
yeah, exactly, really similarly to MF Doom
Mm.
actually, and like was really into people like King Cruel,
Mm.
as they were coming up, which I think is really neat. Uh, I like London. We are both from London. I think that's fine to say. We're not gonna
Yeah.
die.
I think artistically, lots of people are embracing London, especially like
Yeah,
as we're recording this, we've just had a whole week of kind of being Black Country New Road just being worldwide acclaim.
yeah,
Everyone unanimously is agreeing. Lots of interesting stuff happening artistically in London right now.
yeah,
Yes,
definitely.
we are
And like,
economically disposed to have good art coming out because of
yeah,
how British government funding works. But yeah.
yeah, because of capital, whatever. Um,
Oops.
we don't get political on this show.
Let's not get political.
Hey. Uh, but there's a couple of moments where I think some elements of like the London jazz scene in particular, which I think we talked about, or mainly just one, kind of flares up on this album, which I think is really neat because yeah, it's like a thing. It's a scene I'm really
Interesting.
into. I think London's current jazz scene is like really really great.
Yeah, I'd like to hear. What do you think if the jazz scene just showed up in this album for you?
Sorry.
You think it's the London jazz scene that's happening right now?
Honestly, mainly just on the song World Market Mo Money. Like I really dig just the freeness and the looseness of the instrumental on that. And it's really, really reminiscent of like when I've gone to see like just fantastic performers like Ezra Collective, and other people, like, and they're just so like comfortable with each other, and I don't know, like Mike's interpretive poetry is very similar to some stuff I've seen going on along the top, and it's just really nice because I think those two complement each other so well. I don't know. I think it's really pretty. I want to talk about that more at the end. But yeah, this is cool.
Just cool. So I don't have any history of Mike really, other than the person who came onto the podcast to guest on our which episode did Gabriel come on for again? Black
for
Country New Road.
for Black Country New Road and Playboy Carti, a whole lot of red. The
Exactly.
two.
Yeah. But yes, no, yeah, Gabriel also did the music for our special episode. Loves Mike and
Thank you,
like was
Gabriel.
telling me for the longest time. Oh yeah, I don't listen to much hip hop anymore, but I'm keeping up with Rory Ferrero and I'm listening to Mike still.
Oh, that's cool.
And so I had it in my head. I gotta get to Mike. Gotta get to Mike. I think I actually
Gotta get to Mike. Gotta get to Mike.
This is my first Mike album, and I haven't gone back to listen to the other ones. I know that people really love "May God Bless Your Hustle," but I haven't heard it yet. The first thing that jumped out to me was like, this sounds like Earl. Like, this really sounds like Earl.
Yeah.
Especially some rap songs era Earl.
100%. 100%. Especially just because I was on the brain with his new album coming out. Like I was like, whoa.
Yeah, sick.
Isn't it like sick? Yeah. I was gonna say.
Yeah, looking up more stuff about like kind of Mike's career trajectory, it seems that he is like artistically affiliated with Earl. Like he has like a mentee relationship. He really like Earl Sweatshirt is to Mike what Bus Driver was to Rory Ferrero, kind of thing.
Yeah, that really resonates.
I can't think. I was trying to think of other like rap proteges.
Jay-Z to Kanye West. Not really.
Jay-Z. Like Olivia Rodrigo to Paramore.
Oh, whoa. Like I was so like I was so immersed in like a scene that I really really adore, and then like that was like gender dysphoria. That was horrible.
Yeah, exactly. So that makes sense. It makes sense. This is a silly tangent we were on, but it makes sense that this kind of sounds like and it's really interesting hearing you say that you get some London from this as well. And I've been thinking that a lot recently, especially with the new Injury Reserve stuff.
Oh, dude, it's all over.
Recording so much of their shit with like jockstrap, having like drums from the Black MIDI. Like London's kind of.
It's popping.
I don't know what to call it. It's not post-punk anymore.
I want to say like London's sad jazz, hip hop, rock scene.
Yeah.
London's sad scene. I think London's in its seasonal depression era, and like music's really there as well with lockdown and everything. So like I think it's just beautiful.
Yeah, I do think we're seeing these scenes coalesce, and I think this album has kind of similar, kind of thick, dreary, mixing
got a lot of the same
motifs with
motifs.
hope. Yeah, kind of. There's kind of a meanderingness to this album that reminds me of
there's an idleness. An idleness,
yeah. Yeah, it's a thick album. Like I feel like we used to. I joked about this having Hypnagogic as a tag on it. I do think that really comes through when you listen to it. A lot of these songs do feel like listening to a radio station and you're kind of half asleep, and the bars are kind of muffled as if someone's trying to talk to you as you're waking up. There's a real kind of dreamy quality to this album, I think.
For me, it's like it's Armand Hammer meets Beach House.
Damn, topical.
Yeah, I'm on it with the hot takes. No, but just calling it dreamy really resonated with me because I think the main thing I wanted to come at this album from is that I just really like being in its world. It's a very like it's like being at your friend's house like the day after you got really like drunk or high, and you kind of stay around too long, but you also kind of love it. And you don't really want to leave, but like you should probably go home because you've got some work to do tomorrow. it really just feels warm, but also simultaneously honest and sad. I think there's a lot of this stuff, like a lot of the lyricism kind of gestures towards difficult topics in Mike's life, but kind of ignores them. The hook on, I think it's Zazar, really sums this up, where he's like struggling, stuck in the midst of it, and that's basically just repeated. It's not like he's not in the heat of all this stuff that's affected him, but he's very much like in the late after effects of it. And there's this kind of apathy almost to directly facing the content that he's rapping about that really comes across in the hypnagogic stuff that you just talked about. And I just really digged that. That's kind of where I'm at right now anyway.
Yeah. I mean, that really comes through the performance. I think that another great example of that kind of motif of kind of apathy, but also like trying, like, so like the kind of apathy you get when you're in a depressive episode, but you're also trying really hard. It's just hard for people to see that you're trying. So like
Dude, yeah,
in Center City, he is rapping. But the way it just trails off at the end, like, and then the song just
yeah,
ends, like the words kind of become loose and meaningless, so then it kind of just drifts away. I get that kind of
yeah,
trying through apathy vibe I get from this. Uh, and I think I do, like, if I had one criticism for Mike, and it feels maybe unfair, and if anyone like really hard disagrees, like call me out on this. I do think he stands in Earl's shadow a little bit, where a lot of the praises I want to give this album, I feel like Earl kind of there's very similar things, as good if not better,
yeah,
which is a weird feeling. Like for example, in the lyricism, I think a lot of this kind of delivery is very lethargic and also very kind of repetitive, where it feels like a thought that keeps looping, kind of in an anxious
yeah,
way. Like in the song Big Love, it's hard to take love as it is, or love as it was. When it was sick. When it wasn't, it was tough. Like these kind of like
yeah,
it really captures that thought spiral feeling of like, every time you try to think through a problem, it kind of creates a paradox, and you keep trying to work
yeah,
through the paradox, but you just keep going over and over and over it. Which Earl does that really well a lot on some rap songs. I don't want to.
yeah,
It feels reductive to say that should take anything away from what Mike's doing, but I'd be lying if I didn't say I wasn't like thinking about Earl throughout this album, and I feel kind of
yeah.
bad for doing that, but it was
You're
still kind of
cheating.
in that shadow a tiny bit. It did, yeah, yeah.
Mike's your side hoe. No, I'm just edit that out.
Stop.
No, I really get what you're saying. I think the main difference with this album, to like, again, this is I didn't say this actually. This is my first Mike album. But from this album, the main difference I got was that like reluctance to confront the issues directly in a lyrical sense that I mentioned just now. Whereas Earl, I feel like really, really, especially in I Don't Like Shit, I Don't Want to Go Outside. Oh wait, I Don't Like Shit, I Don't Go Outside. I can't remember the exact phrasing.
It's the second one.
Yeah, like that's a very confrontational album. It's a very direct album, in my opinion, and I don't know if like I find Mike's approach of like misdirection maybe a bit less meaningful, or if it actually like transforms what Earl is doing completely into a more like, well, basically into a completely different approach of discussing your mental health and your personal issues. That's where I'm really conflicted on this album, and it's made me really struggle with definitively saying how much I like it.
Yeah, well, I think
But
you've caught on to a really good distinction there.
thank you.
Where I do think Earl is like aggressive. And I
Yeah,
think
yeah,
the Sam Snell's music feels more violent. Like you listen to a song like Off Top or even some rap songs, like some of the imagery in the album is really gross and grotesque and like upsetting. But whereas here, I do think it is more intimate and it's there is that kind of feeling of
it's
nostalgia.
nostalgic.
But yeah, you're right. It's
Yeah.
nostalgic. I mean, the album cover, like, it feels like waking up to someone shining disco lights in your face, and it's this disorienting, weird thing that's happening. It's not completely happy, but it's not completely sad either. There's an ambivalence there. Like Spiral Disco, it really jumps out to me. It's very sweet, melancholic, slow jam beat. Like a lot of the beats here, which almost remind me of I don't know, like some kind of it's very hauntological if you're into Mark Fisher at all, where it sounds like what I'd imagine the 70s TV show about like sounds like.
Yeah.
But I've never actually watched the 70s TV show, so I'm just like it's this fictional
Projecting.
thing that I'm borrowing, yeah, from nostalgia and like kind of in a similar way to like vaporwave aesthetics or like Fallout aesthetics, right? Like kind of this
Mm,
fictional borrowed nostalgia. The general kind of retro sound to this album kind of has that feeling, and that last track especially, it feels very very bedroomy and very intimate,
I
but it never
agree.
feels like angry. Sometimes it feels frustrated, but yeah, I think that is the fine distinction between like this and like how Earl expresses these kind of some of these similar ideas.
Yeah, it's very. I think intimate is such a great word for this album. But it's. But then again, as I say that, I think that's all pretty much all on the production side.
Mhm.
Like I mentioned the word nostalgia before, and it's true. It really reminds me of like very innocent time spent with like my friends doing basically nothing. And I think that's really intentional. Like I think that's what it's going for. It's like this is a very limbo-esque album. Um, but at the same time as there's all that familiarity coming through, I found it really hard to get to know Mike on this album. And I want to more. Like the more I dig into the lyrics, the more I just not analyze stuff, but like go over it. Um, and a lot of this is like beautiful poetry. Like I really think a lot of this is gorgeous, and I think he's got a real handle on like wordplay. Um, it's very dense, and I think
Yeah,
it is intentionally so. I think it's quite a like guarded persona that he gives across on this, and I just really find those personas quite interesting. Uh,
yeah,
sorry, just very quickly, I've been very positive about this, and the only I would want to balance that out slightly with the fact that I think despite the fact this I hate complaining about things like this, but despite the fact this is only 40 minutes, the album does feel like a tad long. And then there's that kind of
yeah.
like
It's the
Ludo
classic
narrative.
underground rapper released an album of 17 tracks.
Yeah,
It's only 41
I was
minutes. And it's like,
I
why does
know.
this feel like it's longer than 41
I know.
minutes?
I honestly really
It's
wouldn't mind
dense.
if there were way less of these songs and they were just longer,
Yeah.
because a lot of them, like I really really adore this kind of production. Like I put this on in front of my flat, like the first time I listened to it in the living room, and they were like, okay, yeah, this is Tilly core, basically. Like this, you will like this kind of thing, and I was obviously right there with them. Uh, but like I mentioned, it it is just, I think, bordering on. I wouldn't call this album pastiche at all, but with the length that it is, my enjoyment of it starts to rest a little bit too much on that Tilly core fact. Uh, and like I've kind of brought up, I think although Mike's personality shines through a lot here, I think it's quite frequently like difficult to dig out, and sometimes it's not as diverse as I would like it to be. His character, that is. And so like that like Tilly cornice does start to feel a little dragged out, but at the same time this is like very much my cup of tea, so there's kind of a conflict there going on. But it does ultimately mean that this is still like very much my thing, and I do really enjoy it.
That's a really funny way of describing like not liking this. That's like the most esoteric, inaccessible terms of describing to someone who doesn't know you what's wrong with the album.
Thank you.
But
I'm gonna
but you
take
know,
that as a compliment.
I see what you're saying. You don't want to be
Or
blinded by how much this is directed at your taste.
exactly.
You want to stay critical. Well,
Yeah.
keep it with that in mind. What a great segue into favorite and least favorite tracks. Tilly, how about you start this time?
Okay, cool. First off, I'm just gonna rattle through these. Is Ours Is Art. I mentioned the hook earlier, and I think this is a really important aspect in the album of bringing up that kind of like lethargic positivity that it has, and it's kind of towing the line between it being truthfully uh, about improving yourself, or if it's actually just kind of lulling yourself into a false sense of security. It kind of feels throughout a lot of this, just mainly in the hook, that he's dismissing the idea that he's struggling, the idea that that he could have more agency in his actions. But yeah, I think that's a really important song for Mike's persona on this album. Next up is World Market, Mo Money, and this in conjunction with Crystal Ball, my other favorite song on the album, I think kind of picks it back up for the second half. I mentioned World Markets, I think London jazz inspired production in the second half, and I really do just adore the way the way he like rides along the top of this very scatty, syncopated production. I think it works really well and is a really good moment for shaking things up for his flow. It's one of the few times on the album that I feel comfortable saying that he does that. So yeah, I think World Market is really good for that. And same with Crystal Ball, really. I don't have an awful lot to say about Crystal Ball, to be completely honest with you. But those are my three favorite tracks. Last up for least favorite is Sandra. I just think the more sparse production could have been a really cool avenue to, I don't know, give us something unexpected here, truly unexpected. But I think in my mind, it just kind of really sort of draws out the weaknesses in Mike's bars on this album. I think it puts too much of a limelight on his delivery, and I don't think that's what a lot of this album has been about sonically. We kind of talked about how it's not an album you have on in the background, but his lyrics are very, and the way they're produced, they're very wishy-washy. And I don't think enough is done to adapt that style on this song. It just kind of seems like he's transferred that over from the rest of his songs, but this is a really it's a very uniquely produced song in the context of the album, and I just think the vocals don't match up with that, and it doesn't work out well.
Yeah. Miraculously, on my favorite and least favorite track list, we are sharing the same least favorite track, but we have completely different favorite tracks, which I think is a good sign, right? That there's lots of good stuff to find at the album, and maybe the stuff that's less good is concentrated and containable.
Yeah, totally.
But in the order in which they appear on the track list, my favorite tracks are Leaders of Tomorrow, Intro. I love
Vibe.
the beat on this track. It's gorgeous and kind of tender, and then it kind of switches up from the spoken word to the rapping verse, and the beat becomes soaring and shimmering and very grounded scope in a way that I don't think that the rest of the album is, which is fine because this is this bombastic intro, but it's just an incredibly cool moment that kind of takes me by surprise. I also like conceptually the idea of having the intro track being track three, because it adds to
Yeah.
this like stonery vibe of the album that like it took two tracks to kind of get the album to start. And like track two ending of like, all right, let's start this thing, you know.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I think that's really cool. And then my next favorite track is "Baby Villain" in Our Veins, which is a great song title. Uh, And I really think, as this album goes on, especially in that middle portion, I think it really grows. And I think this track is a great example of that. It's a very full track. We talked about this album being perhaps a bit too many songs in it, and some of the songs feeling underbaked. And this is a track that feels really complete, really whole.
Yeah.
Um, you got this kind of it's another one of those like beat switch songs, and it's got like very intentional duality to it. It begins with Mike talking about kind of regret and guilt, and kind of emotional numbness, the relationship with his sister, kind of becoming more distanced. Yeah, with this gorgeous line. I ain't caught up with my sis lately, forgetting we was kids, try to remember all the bliss, just remember shit being crazy. You know, it's really kind of tender, nostalgic lines. But that first verse is really thick and quite dismal. It ends with the line, "Every carrier is mistaken, buried in abyss." Just really no hope. But then the beat switches in the second verse. We get this kind of odd, kind of mirrored version of that first verse. Um, you know, where he is trying to be more optimistic. Thanks to my sisters, they check up on me. Trying to get bigger and getting obese. These lines about taking care of himself, about connecting with his family,
Mm-hmm.
and and yeah, I think this song, the duality of that, really encapsulates like what we've been saying about this album's kind of ambivalence and this like dystoner who's trying to try, but it's hard to see that sometimes. I think this song really captures both of those modes. This album kind of being really restless in that way and constantly shifting between these two modes, and
Mm-hmm.
there's a cyclical nature to it. Um, and then finally, I really like Airdrop. It's got that lovely jingly 70s style beat that again sounds like this like hypnagogic dream of like a 70s TV show that never really existed. It's just in the modern imaginary of what a 70s TV show with a nice jingle sounds like. Uh, but yeah, it's got this really sweet concept about, airdropping your love to someone. It really kind of recalls this kind of like romantic social media anxiety that's like very, you know, contemporary as a feeling. There's this great line, "I sent my love, let me know if you got it. I'm blazed and probably drunk, scared to open your message for days." That's a real like vulnerable and relatable line about kind of, opening up to someone and you're not sure they're going to respond and you kind of go check the message just because you're anxious that you're not emotionally ready for whatever's going to come from the other end. Just stuff like that. Just there's a really nice, personal, intimate kind of touch to Mike's approach. And while it's not like grandiose or hugely theatrical all the time, it's definitely brings me closer to kind of the persona that arises in this album, even if it isn't like super obvious. It's like an evasive persona, but I do feel like it's there. And like you said
No,
earlier,
one hundred percent.
with it being like being at your friend's house in the morning after a kind of rough night of partying, but also kind of come down. It really does have that sort of familial intimacy. And yeah, like you, I think Sandra is my least favorite track. For pretty much the same reasons. I guess one thing I'd add is it's interesting how I feel like this track anticipates possibly the worst moments of the new El Spectra album, Sick. Um,
Mm.
Reminds me a bit of Titanic, which is a decent song, but I don't think it's like up to standards of El's best. And kind of trying a more melodic, trappy flow. Using kind of the lethargic, checked out delivery. The beat here doesn't get quite as trappy as Earl will get, but I do think that what this does is forefront kind of this repetitive lethargy, which like in my opinion isn't the highlight of Mike's music. And that's pretty much all you're getting with this track. So yeah, my favorite track. That being said, Tilly, would you recommend Mike's Disco! Exclamation point.
Yeah, I'd give it a decent recommend. I'm sad that I couldn't quite get it up to a strong because I think there's just too many elements holding it down. But I think Mike takes on two things here, which is kind of, I think I don't like to compare. We said that already in this episode, but he kind of takes on Earl Sweatshirt and also generally just the abstract hip hop scene, and I think he definitely like measures up to the plate. He like it's not a complete. Well, it's a definite success. I just think that more could have been done to make this his own. But I still really enjoy it. I still think the production's really characterful, very nostalgic, and very attention grabbing. And I think Mike's vocals and bars pair really well with it. I think you get a really good sense of who he is and where he's coming at this project from. And so, yeah, I can't really ask for a whole lot more. I just think some more fleshed out songs. I don't think you need 17 songs on a 40-minute album. I mean, unless that's what you're going for, but I just think fewer but stronger ideas would have been a better approach for this, like we talked about. But yeah, decent recommend. What about you?
Yeah, I'm pretty much right there with you with a decent recommend. One thing I've been thinking about this album is I do think it's greater than the sum of its parts, and it was making me think a lot about a Beach House interview that they did of Fantana recently, which is a really lovely interview. If you haven't watched it, I did not expect Victoria to be that like upbeat and
I need
jokey.
To watch that. That's
because
cute.
of like her grandiose. She's so grand in the performance of Beach House. But in that video, she was just vibing,
Yeah.
But she made a really cool comment. Like her and Alex made a cool comment about that they approached the new album, Once Twice Melody, as kind of trying to create a world that you could kind of fall into and just vibe in, as opposed to kind of distinct musical moments that are segmented. It wants to feel kind of like this thing you can envelop yourself in, and I feel that way about this album as well. I don't think this is an album that kind of like track by track it's like, oh, this is a banger, oh, this is a banger, oh, I can play this on the radio. It really feels like you can light one up, put this album on, and just really like just ensconces you, right? Like in this kind of nostalgic, hazy, like colorful disco lights through like blurred eyes, right? Like it's a really gorgeous atmosphere, and it's really intimate. It feels really genuine, and I think
it's very genuine.
It's not super showy, but I do think that's where this album really shines. When you view it as a whole, I think it really does shine. I think when you pick apart track by track, some of them feel a bit underdeveloped, some of them feel like maybe throwaways, but altogether it does come together to make a really beautiful effect. So I do think it's still a mild recommend, but I do think this is like well worth listening to if you're into understated underground hip hop.
Very quickly, two things. Yeah, I think the genuineness that you brought up is why the comparisons we made with Earl, like I think that's why it's so forgivable. It's because it just feels so down to earth and like it's coming from him. So I don't feel like it's a cop out. And secondly, I put on some more Mike recently because I have been obsessed with this album, and like my flatmate said, okay, Tilly, stop. Mike has a great vibe. I love it, but it's too much. And it's exactly because of that Beach House thing you talked about. Like, I'm just really sitting in that Mike world right now, just posted up, slumped in my living room, listening to Mike. It's where I'm at, and I'm very glad you drew that feeling out of me. But yeah, still a decent record.
Hell yeah. Yeah, this is music for when you're too depressed to go to the toilet.
Shitting and farting. Okay.
Bringing it full circle, right back to that Euphoria. Anyway, cool. So next week, what are we covering?
Doing Parallel Mothers, the new Pedro Almodovar film. So yeah, we're just gonna check that out, see what we think. Very low stakes episode for me.
It's very high stakes for me because I have no idea if I like this director or not. I've seen like 3 of his films, and like literally in the middle. One of them I thought was great. One of them I thought was like totally mid, like perfectly fine, but made me feel nothing. Another one I just thought was
Yeah,
awful. So I
that's
genuinely
so
have no
funny.
idea if we're gonna fight next week or if we're gonna, rejoice together.
I'm really
But
excited.
I'm
I
looking forward
think
to it regardless.
I think we might be due a fight. I think we might be due a fight. I haven't seen it yet, but I can really feel it coming. It's like, there's a lot of storms going on in the UK right now, and I think that's coming for the podcast as well.
Yeah,
But
if I
yeah,
can find time, I would really like to go back and watch What About My Mother? Is that the name of the film from the 90s that
hmm
he did? And see how his writing about his mum, has all mums in general, as a platonic ideal, has developed over the decades.
yeah,
But yeah,
that's a good
it'd be cool
idea.
to see.
If I have time, I'll do that too. Um, Great. So thank you. Oh wait, no, this is you.
Yeah, thanks for listening. Be sure to like, comment, and subscribe on your favorite podcast delivery app or whatever you listen to podcasts on. And yeah, goodbye. Let us know what you think about Mike. Let us know what you think about Euphoria. I don't know. Anyway, let's get out of here.
Let's get at him. Okay, thanks. Bye.